Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in today on our webinar series. Today, as you can see from the title, we're going to go through 5 quick Excel tips. These are basically ones that our clients have seen us perform, either on-site or for them, and they've asked us, oh, hey, how'd you do this? That's really neat. So what we start to do is document which things that we were covering that other people might be interested in seeing. So with that, we put them together in a slide, and this is probably part 1 that we're going to go through here. So as you can see, these are the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to compare columns, and then next we're going to use finding formula sources. Then next, we're going to go into what is probably my absolute favorite feature of Excel, which is conditional formatting. We're going to go through some autofill features and how those are going to make your life easier. And then probably one of the most requested things has to do with printing and scaling. So with those topics underway, let's get going on the actual presentation. All right, so first thing we're going to go through is show you a real life example of something that comes up often with our clients. So basically what we have here is 2 different contact lists. So these are 2 different company lists or contact lists, and it might be from 2 different sources that have become out of sync after a while. So maybe you have a mailing program, and then you also have a CRM program or something along those lines, and you're trying to see, okay, who's in what list and who's not in the other list. Again, maybe it's a mailing list and there's people who have unsubscribed and you're trying to figure out who those people are. So obviously, as you can see right off the bat when you look, it looks like these lists are very, very similar between them. But if you note, when I hit the Control End here to get down to the bottom, you can see clearly the lists are not the same because there's more in one than the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Home to go back up to the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this feature which is within conditional formatting. We're going to go into conditional formatting in more detail and a couple more steps down the road, but I'm going to show you the first step of what we can use this for. So one thing that's really cool is there is a feature already built in to compare these two. So what we're trying to do is find out which items exist in one column that may not be in the other. So we're going to go up to conditional formatting. We're going to go to highlight cell rules. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom here into duplicate values. Now what duplicate values will do, that'll show us which rows have the same value or which items in each row have the same value. We're looking at just the opposite. So hidden in this little drop-down list is unique values, which is what we are looking for. So we're looking for the ones that are unique in each one. Now, as you can see, once we select that, voila, we can now highlight on both columns which companies are not in each column, and allows us very, very quickly to figure that out without having to go through and sort and organize and all sorts of other things. So really quick time-saving step here. But let's say that you have a little different scenario. In this case, we're selling a particular item, and we have all the sales of that item. And same thing, we may have 2 different packages that we're using to check on the sales of those items. And what we want to do is find out why these 2 totals are off. So again, we're going to, if I go all the way down to the bottom, I'm going to do a real quick total here. So see how we have the total here, and we have total here, and these 2 totals are off. So somewhere within these formulas, there's some numbers that are off. So we're going to do the same exact thing. So it works with numbers just as easily as it works with letters. So again, now you can see very quickly when you're auditing the sales of these products, okay, for some reason this particular item didn't show up. Maybe this might work well if somebody just accidentally transposed 2 numbers and it's just off by a little bit at the end. Really quickly to find out why those 2 numbers are off. Okay, next thing I'm going to go into is dependencies or finding formulas. So as you can see right here, we have a very, very typical type of spreadsheet that has all sorts of numbers that are feeding off from different places. Now, we're going to focus on this number right here. So what we can see is this number is not a static number. It comes from a formula, and it's a sum formula, so it's adding it up. And if we hit the F2 button, we can, one, edit that formula, but two, it highlights where it's coming from. So that's a nice quick way. If we want to see all of the formulas on the page, we can hold down the Control key and hit the tilde button. Now what that does is actually really cool. It shows us the whole page and all of the formulas on this entire page. So you can see it shows us really quickly all of the sum formulas. Now that was, again, I'm going to hit Control. And the other character I'm hitting here is the tilde button, that one, the little squiggly line that's in the top left corner of the keyboard. So I'm going to hit the Control tilde button again to get rid of it because that's a little messy. As you didn't, in case you didn't notice, there's a lot of stuff on that screen right there. Now, what I really care about is what's making this number right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Formulas. And I'm going to go up to this button right here, which is Trace Precedence. Now, when I click on this button, you can see really quickly, it shows me, without hitting the F2, it shows me that these numbers go into this number right here. Now, what I'm going to do again is I'm going to hit that button a second time. Now you can see that these numbers are in turn fed off of these numbers. And of course, if you hit the button again, it'll show you what makes up these numbers. So you can see that this number came from here. And then if we hit it again, we can go through and see what's making up those numbers. So as you can see, it shows us step by step by step, very, very clearly what's making up this one number right here. Now, I'm going to click on this Remove Arrows button here just to clean up my workspace here. So that's really cool. But what about this number up here? So we have this number up here, which is the 3.3 million. And I want to know what happens if I change this number. Well, they actually have a button that does just the opposite as the previous one. So this is trace dependent. So when we click on this one, we're going to click on it. It's going to say, hey, if you change that number, it's going to affect over here and over here. And if you click on it again, well, it's going to change this number, and it'll change that number, and change it again. Oh, it's going to end up hitting this number, and then so forth. And then it just goes around into every time that that number is referenced, anywhere this cell is referenced. So now we really know, hey, if I change this cell, I'm actually going to change all of these other things. It has an effect on multiple areas. So we're going to, so that is the trace precedence and the trace dependence, which again is one that we use all the time, especially in a multi-nested formula. We have everything is multiple numbers are dependent or precedent on another one. All right, let's get into one of my favorites. We're going to look at this. So this is a sheet that's probably not unfamiliar with a lot of people who are doing either accounts payable, accounts receivable, office managing, you name it. What we have here is a sales number, and we have the sales numbers for all these items per month. Pretty typical. Well, what are we trying to find out from here? So one thing we might want to find out is, well, which month did we sell the most of a particular item? So in this case, let's say it's snow blowers. So if we want to know which month we're going to go and find sold the most snow blowers, we're going to look across here. We're going to scan really quickly across. I'm going to say, well, it looks like January was the highest month. All right, well, what was the second highest? Again, we're going to scan through really quickly. We're going to say, oh, looks like September. And what's the third? Well, once we get into this, now it gets a little fuzzy because these numbers are all very similar to each other. So this is a really, really quick, easy way to find this out. So I'm going to highlight these cells. Now, I can't, in this case, in case you're wondering, I cannot use the Shift End key. So the shift right arrow will select the whole row, but I actually can't do that because I don't want the totals. So just so you know, you cannot use the shift arrow key in here, but you can use it in other places, obviously. So we're going to go back to our home button. We're going to click again on the conditional formatting. This time we're going to use color scales. Color scales are basically going to change the colors of the formula based on the number in relationship to the other numbers in the series. So in this case, as you can see, if we change the colors, it would change which ones we pick, it changes the colors. Now what we're going to do is choose this one right here. Now what this wasn't going to do, the highest number is going to be in green, lowest number is going to be in red, and everything else is going to be a shade between there. So when we click on this, watch what happens. Voila, look at this. Our darkest green is our highest month, then this one, and now we can quickly see, oh, well, look at this little shade of green over here. That's our third highest. Oh, I can see right away, this is our fourth highest, and so on. So really, really quick and cool. So now, of course, we want to do this for the rest of the numbers in here. Now, if we just simply drag and drop this, all we're going to do is replace the numbers. So that's not going to do us any good. So instead, what we're going to do is highlight our mouse over this little block right here until it turns into a plus sign like that. Then I'm going to use my right mouse button, not my left one, but my right one. And I'm going to drag this down. And when I do that, I'm going to get this nice little menu. With this menu, I can now choose what I want to do. So I can copy the cells, which I don't want to do. I can fill the series, which we'll get into in a little bit. I can fill it with formatting or fill it without formatting. In my case, I want to fill it with formatting only. And so what that will do is tell us exactly how much we sold in each item in each month just by visually looking at it. So we can tell any one of these products which one was our best month and which is our worst month. But also, if you've noticed, it's really cool because now visually we can look at the whole, everything as a whole, and we can quickly look and say, you know what, I have a lot of red here. I bet December was a bad month for me. Sure enough, we can see a low number in December. But I have this grouping of green in here, so I wonder August was probably a pretty good month. So we can quickly see trends in the numbers. This is really good, like specifically to see trends and what's going on and to visually see what is the most beneficial month or any number. So obviously it can do it with any number and any series of numbers. Very, very useful. Okay, next thing I want to go into is some autofill options. So we see a lot of clients who could really benefit from this. So what I'm going to do is take that same sheet that was on the other page, as you can see, but it's missing a whole bunch of information. So what we're going to show you is some of the autofill and automating features that are part of Excel that are really cool. So we're going to put in some numbers over here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by putting in a number on the cell here. So I'm going to use a feature called rand between. What rand between does, it will automatically generate a number between the two numbers that I give it. So I'm going to give it the 100,000 and the million numbers. And it's going to automatically generate a random number in between those two. Okay, so here's our random number. All right, terrific. Now, I want to start filling this out for the rest of them. So when I do this, I'm going to get an error. So I'm not going to get any numbers at all because it's using these numbers over here. So I'm going to show you a few different ways to automate this. So first, what we want to do is we want to copy these down here. So I can drag these like this and fill them that way. I'm going to show you another feature, which is very cool. I'm going to take the same plus, see how my icon's a plus here. I'm going to double click on it. And all I did was just double click on it. And you see how to automatically notice that there's cells in here, it automatically filled them with the same thing. You want to fill that series in. So all I did was double click it. That's really handy if you have things that go off the screen for a long way. It'll automatically fill that whole page so you're not just dragging down. So now, and do that again, we can drag and drop this, but I can also still use my double click feature over here as well. So now this is really cool. So now it's automatically filling numbers. Now I want to get them across the columns. Now, if I start bringing them across the columns, what happens? Well, I get this big mess over here. The reason I get this mess is because now it's referencing column Q, which doesn't exist, Q and R. So it was being smart enough to say, hey, you are going one over to the right. I'm going to update your columns one to the right. Well, in reality, we didn't want to do that. So what can we do? So we're going to use a special character in Excel called the $sign. So we're going to use the $sign in front of each of these column names or the column letters. Now what that's going to do is that's going to tell Excel that I do not want you to auto change those column numbers. I only want you to auto change the rows. So now when we do this, we can see that the columns stay the same, the rows change. Now when we drag them across, you can see the same thing. The columns are all O and P, and just the rows have changed. But of course, I'm going to show you an even quicker way of doing all of this. Because as you probably guessed, if you can do it with the columns, you can also do it with the rows. So now when we go this way and this way, we can quickly see that the rows and the columns are all exactly the same. They're all O4 and P4. So they all reference that same number. Now, so that's the autofill for the columns and the rows. But if you notice up here, we don't have any months. So the other thing that Excel is very clever at is it will look at a series of 2 or more conditions, and it will take its best guess as to what that next one should be. So that might be if you're typing in a bunch of numbers, you type in the number 1, then 2, then 3, you don't have to type them all in. If you literally just type in 1 and 2, you'll see as you drag it over, it knows you want to propagate down to the next level. So you can see now it automatically filled in the 3 and the 4 and everything else. Well, that works for months as well. So when you drag this across, it automatically fills in all of the months for us. Now, one of the things that you guys may have been noticing is that every time I update this page, it automatically keeps generating new numbers. And it might be really annoying because that's not what we want it to do. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole section. We're going to use another special feature in Excel. I'm going to use my right mouse button here. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to copy only the values. So when I copy only the values, as you can see now in these cells, we only have values. Now I can then take this, cut it, and paste it back up here. So again, I'm right mouse clicking on this. Just so you know, I'm not left mouse clicking, I'm right mouse clicking. As you can see now, the values are pasted back in. So they won't keep changing every time we change something else. Now we can get rid of these over here because we're not referencing them anymore. But lastly, as we can see what happened when we did that, it broke our sum. So I'm going to show you the Autosum feature right here, which is this button up here. When you click on this one, it automatically takes its best guess as to what you want to make the total of. So in this case, it correctly guessed that I want to do everything in this row. I'm going to double click here, and it's going to automatically fill in again. And now we have our autofill feature, which made life very easy. Again, use it all the time. Between those different things, we probably use this constantly in Excel, and it's one of the things that our clients ask us about a lot. Okay, lastly, I'm going to get into probably the most asked question that we have regarding Excel, which is just simply printing, which is amazing because Excel is such a great product, but the printing part can be very tricky. So I'm going to show you what I mean. You probably know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to show you the print. Now, this is what this page looks like printed. Not very pretty. So we don't have all of our columns. We're missing everything. It's huge. So how do we get this onto one page? It's actually very simple if you know what tricks you're looking for. So first thing that you can already think of is that we want to change this from portrait to landscape. Now, that didn't do a lot for us. It only added a room for another column over here. Now, what most people will do at this point is they'll start playing around with different row sizes and column sizes and everything like that and try and scrunch them over. But you really don't have to. What you can do is go back here, and you're going to use this feature right here. So this feature is called scaling. Now with scaling, you have three different options. If you have a big project that has a whole bunch of rows and columns, you can say that you want to fit them all on one page. But you can tell it, hey, I only want to fit the columns on one page. I only want to fit the rows on one page. In our case, since it does not go past one page in the rows, either one of these two are going to do the same thing. So we're going to tell it we want to fit all the columns on one page. And look at that. It automatically resized it down. If we wanted to get a little more room, we could narrow the margins this way, so it could stretch it out a little bit. Now it's just automatic. We didn't have to play with any columns, didn't have to play with any sizes, any font sizes, anything like that, just automatically fit it on. Now, here's one thing though. Look at these numbers right here. We don't want these in our printout. Now, we could go through all of the steps that I just showed you, which was the copying, pasting, everything like that, but there's actually even an easier step than doing all that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the mouse down here. I'm going to drag all the way up to the top. We're going to go into this tab here called Page Layout. We're going to hit this button called Print Area. And I'm going to set the print area. And what it means when I set the print area is I am literally telling Excel that no matter what else is on this page, I only want to print the cells that I just highlighted. So what does that look like? It looks like this. Really cool. Look at that. Those columns are all gone. Everything's nice and big and readable. Doesn't matter what I put in here. It is not. We'll get into the spelling in Excel another time, maybe. It's not going to put that in here. It's only going to put in the cells that I wanted to put in. So that is great. You can actually put comments down here. You can put anything you want. It's not going to show up in the final document when you go to print it out. So that's really cool. The other thing that we get a lot of is actually getting to a PDF. So we'll often get a call in our sales department asking for a quote on Adobe Acrobat, full Adobe Acrobat, which is a great product, beautiful, beautiful product. However, some of our clients want to do it just so they can save things as a PDF. Well, Microsoft and all of the Office products, actually it's very easy to save as a PDF. What you're going to do is you're going to go in here, choose Save as PDF. And it's as simple as that. You can change the directory that you want. So that's cool. All right, I'm going to show you one more thing here. Now, let's say you want to print out multiple pages. So as you can see here, by default, Excel always shows just the workbook you're working on, not just the page you're working on. It doesn't show the whole workbook. So what you can do is down here is change it to print the entire workbook. So again, this is one of the questions we get all the time. We have clients that are printing out the pages individually, but you can actually print the entire workbook going through. All right, I'm going to show you one last tip, which has to do with printing. It has to do with PDFs. So lastly, we're going to go to PDF. Now, how do we do that same thing with our workbooks to PDF? So as you can imagine, if we hit save right now, what's going to happen? It's going to print just that one page in Excel. So again, remember by default, Excel doesn't do the whole workbook. It does just the active sheet that you're on. Well, same thing happens when you do the save. It only does the active page that you're on when you're doing a PDF. There's actually a really easy way to fix that. What we're going to do is we're going to go into more options. And we're going to go into options button, which is going to bring up this window right here. So from here, we can decide which pages we want, and then also if we want to print the entire workbook. And as simple as that, we're exporting the entire workbook as a PDF, which is extremely useful. And it does keep the same print area and formatting and everything like that that we already worked on. Okay, so that is it for our 5 quick tips. hopefully you found them interesting. What we would love to hear is some feedback, whether you found it interesting or not, but also on other tips that you might want to see down the road. And if we can do them, we will be extremely delighted to show you whatever we can and help you out. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the seminar.